The Grand Hall of Station Meridian was filled with the greatest military minds in the galaxy. Representatives from 12 different species had gathered for the Joint Command Training Program. It was the most important training event in Coalition history. Warriors, strategists, and commanders from across known space stood in their finest uniforms, speaking in low voices about battles and conquests. Among the towering Crethany warriors who stood 8 feet tall with green scales and powerful tails, among the graceful Vitheri with their silver skin and forearms, among the Mordans whose bodies were half machine and half flesh, there stood a human. She was small compared to everyone else. She was young, and her name was Commander Elara Vance. She was 19 years old. The moment the other species saw her, the whispers began. "Is this a joke?" A Crethoni warrior asked his companion. "The humans sent a child." "Perhaps she is someone's assistant," a Vetheri strategist said with a thin smile. "Surely she cannot be their actual representative." Lara heard every word. She kept her face calm and her back straight. She had expected this. Humans had only joined the Galactic Coalition 15 years ago. 2 species that lived for 400 years or more, humans were practically infants. They called humanity a juvenile species because humans lived short lives and had no long military history among the stars. But what made the aliens laugh openly was her age. To them, a 19-year-old commanding anything was not just strange. It was ridiculous. The opening ceremony began with great fanfare. Flags from all 12 species hung from the ceiling. Music played. The Supreme Admiral gave a speech about unity and cooperation. Then came the introductions. When it was time for the humans to be introduced, High War Master Kethforin of the Crethany stepped forward. He was enormous, covered in battle scars, and his yellow eyes looked down at Elara with open contempt. "I must ask," he said loudly so everyone could hear, "why the humans would send a hatchling to learn the arts of war. Is this what humanity considers their best? A child who has barely learned to walk?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Some tried to hide it. Others did not bother. Elara stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. She did not show anger. She simply looked up at the War Master and spoke clearly. "Among my people, War Master, some of our greatest leaders commanded armies before their 20th year. Alexander conquered nations at 20. Joan of Arc led armies at 17. We do not measure wisdom by the count of seasons. We measure it by the fire in the heart and the sharpness of the mind." The laughter died. The War Master stared at her for a long moment. Then he snorted and walked away. But Elara noticed that a few aliens in the crowd were looking at her differently now. Not with respect, not yet, but with curiosity. After the ceremony, Elara was assigned to her training squadron. She would work with 3 aliens who would become her teammates for the entire program. When she met them, she understood immediately that this would not be easy. The first was Ketsaron, nephew of the High War Master himself. He was young for a Crethany, only 80 years old, but he was already a decorated warrior. He looked at Elara like she was an insect. The second was Vela, a Vetheri tactician known for her brilliant strategic mind. She had studied warfare for over a century. She did not laugh at Elara, but her silver eyes held quiet judgment. The third was Mordan 7, a cybernetic officer whose emotions had been reduced by his machine parts. He scanned Elara with his mechanical eye and said flatly, "Human, short lifespan, limited strength, inefficient biological systems. Probability of useful contribution, 12%. "Thank you for the warm welcome," Elara said dryly. They began their training exercises the next day. Kethsorin took command immediately. He did not ask. He simply declared himself leader because he was the strongest and oldest. Vela seemed content to offer advice. Mordan 7 followed orders efficiently, and Elara was ignored completely. During a strategy simulation, Elara noticed a flaw in Kethsorin's attack plan. She tried to speak up, but he cut her off. "The child will be silent," he growled. "When you have fought in real battles, then you may speak. Until then, watch and learn." Elara said nothing, but she made notes. She studied her teammates. She learned how they thought, what they valued, what they feared. This was something humans were good at. They watched. They adapted. They survived. One evening, Vela found Alara alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The Vethri approached quietly. "You do not seem bothered by how they treat you," Vela observed. "I have faced worse," Alara said simply. "You are very young. What could you have possibly faced?" Alara was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice steady but soft. "When I was 7 years old, my colony on Harkin 4 was attacked by the Zorvathi Dominion. They killed 12,000 people in 3 days. My parents were among them. I hid in the forests alone for 3 weeks before rescue came. I ate insects and drank rainwater. I heard the screams at night. I survived." Vela said nothing. Her silver face showed the first hint of something other than judgment. "I joined military training at 14, Alara continued. "I graduated top of every class. Not because I wanted glory. Because I never want another child to feel as helpless as I did. So no, being laughed at by warriors who have never known true loss does not bother me. I have already survived the worst thing I can imagine." Before Vela could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed. A voice came over the speakers, announcing an emergency. All training squadrons were ordered to the briefing room immediately when they arrived. The Supreme Admiral's face was grim. A holographic display showed a medical station near the border of Coalition space. It was in ruins. Debris floated everywhere. Escape pods drifted among the wreckage. "The Zorvathi Dominion has attacked," the Admiral announced. "They struck without warning. There are survivors in escape pods, but 3 Zorvathi warships remain in the area, hunting them. Our main fleet is engaging the enemy's primary force, but we need support units to protect the evacuation. Training squadrons will be deployed immediately. This is no longer a simulation. This is real." The room erupted in murmurs. Keth Saran's eyes gleamed with excitement. A real battle. A chance to prove himself, Mordansevin calculated quietly. Vela's expression grew serious, and Alara stood frozen, her heart pounding. The Zorvathi. The same species that had destroyed her home. The same monsters that had killed her parents and left her alone in the dark. Keth Soren turned to the squadron. "I will lead us to glory," he declared. "We will crush these Zorvathi and show them Krathani's strength." Alara said nothing. But when she looked at the images of those escape pods floating in the darkness, she saw something the others did not. She saw children inside those pods. Children waiting for someone to save them. She had been that child once, and she would not let them down. They underestimated the child warrior, till the enemy bowed to their commander. Part 2. The Coalition ships dropped out of hyperspace, and the nightmare became real. The medical station that had once saved countless lives was now nothing but broken metal and shattered glass floating in the cold void of space. Bodies drifted among the debris. Emergency lights blinked weakly from damaged sections, and scattered throughout the destruction were dozens of escape pods carrying survivors who were still alive, still hoping for rescue. But they were not alone. 3 Zorvathi warships prowled through the debris field, like predators hunting wounded prey. Their dark hulls were covered in sharp angles and glowing red symbols. They moved with terrible patience, scanning for survivors, ready to destroy anyone who tried to escape. The main Coalition fleet engaged the largest Zorvathi ship in the distance. Explosions lit up the darkness like distant stars. But the training squadrons were given a different mission. They had to protect the evacuation. They had to save the survivors. Keth Soren stood at the command console of their small ship, his scales almost glowing with excitement. This was his moment. His chance to prove his worth to his uncle, the High War Master. "All ships attack formation," he ordered through the communication channel. "We will strike the enemy directly. Krathoni warriors do not hide. We meet our enemies with strength." Vela's voice came through the speakers, calm but concerned. "Keth Soren, our training vessels are not built for direct combat. The Zorvathi ships have superior firepower. Perhaps we should consider a different approach," Mordansevin added his analysis. Calculating probability of success with direct assault. Result: 27% survival rate. 73% chance of total squadron loss. Cowardice, Kethsorin growled. Numbers mean nothing when you have courage. We attack now. Ilara had been silent since they arrived. She stood at a secondary console, her eyes fixed on the sensor readings. She was not looking at the enemy ships. She was looking at the escape pods, tracking their movements, studying the patterns of how the Zorvathi were hurting them. Something was wrong. The Zorvathi ships were not trying to destroy the escape pods. They were pushing them. Gently, almost carefully. They were guiding the survivors toward a specific area of the debris field. It made no sense. The Zorvathi were cruel and ruthless. Why would they spare the pods? Unless they wanted the survivors to go somewhere specific. Ilara's blood went cold. She had seen this before. She had been 7 years old, hiding in the forests of Harkon IV, watching through broken windows as Zorvathi soldiers herded families toward what looked like safety. But it was not safety. It was a trap. A killing zone designed to maximize death and terror. "Stop," Ilara said suddenly. Kethsorin turned to her with fury in his yellow eyes. "You dare give orders, child." "The debris field," Ilara said quickly. "The area where the escape pods are heading. It is a trap. The Zorvathi have placed mines there. If we attack directly and push the survivors toward that zone, they will all die." "Ridiculous," Kethsorin snarled. "You see enemies in shadows? This is simple cowardice disguised as caution." "I am not a coward," Ilara said firmly. "I am someone who has seen Zorvathi tactics before. They do not just want to kill. They want to create terror. They want survivors to see other survivors die. They herd their victims like animals to slaughter." Kethsorin stepped toward her, his massive form towering over the young human. "You will be silent and follow my commands, or I will have you removed from this bridge." Ilara did not back down. She looked up at him without fear. "If you attack now, you will kill everyone in those pods. Is your pride worth their lives?" For a moment the bridge was silent. Vela watched with wide silver eyes. Mordonsovin's mechanical eye flickered as he processed the confrontation. Then Kethsorin made his decision. Attack formation. All ships engage the enemy. The squadron moved forward. Ilara watched helplessly as the Crethini warrior led them toward the Zorvathi ships. She had one chance. One desperate option. She moved to the communication console and opened a wide broadcast channel, one that would reach the escape pods directly. "Attention all survivors," she transmitted quickly. "Do not proceed to the northern debris zone. Repeat, do not proceed north. There are mines. Change course to coordinates 773. Help is coming. Trust me." Kethsorin spun around with rage in his eyes. "What have you done? You have broken formation. You have violated direct orders." "I have saved their lives," Ilara replied. Before Kethsorin could respond, the sensors screamed with warnings. In the northern debris zone, explosions erupted one after another. Mines detonated in a chain reaction, filling the area with fire and shrapnel. If the escape pods had continued on their original course, every single one would have been destroyed, but they had changed direction. They had listened to the young human's warning. They were safe. The bridge was silent. Mordon 7 spoke first. Recalculating. The human's assessment was correct. Mine density in the northern zone was sufficient to destroy all escape pods. Her intervention saved approximately 400 lives. Vela looked at Ilara with new eyes. "How did you know?" "I told you," Ilara said quietly. "The Zorvathi used the same tactics at Harkon IV. They herded families into kill zones. I watched it happen from the forest. I was 7 years old. You do not forget something like that. Ever." Kethsorin said nothing. His scales had lost their excited glow. For the first time since they met, he looked at Ilara not with contempt, but with something else. Something that might have been shame. The rescue operation continued. With the mines exposed, the coalition ships could guide the survivors safely. Shuttles collected escape pods. Medical teams prepared to receive the wounded. For a brief moment, it seemed like victory was possible. Then everything changed. A shadow emerged from behind the nearest moon. At first, the sensors could not identify it. Then the shape became clear, and fear gripped every heart on the bridge. It was a Zorvathi command ship. A massive vessel, twice the size of anything in the training fleet. Its hull was black as death, covered in weapons that glowed with terrible energy. It was a ship built for one purpose: destruction. A transmission came through on all channels. The voice was deep and cold. Elysian vessels. I am Warlord Draxus of the Zorvathi Dominion. You have interfered with our hunt. You have stolen our prey. For this, you will be punished. Surrender the survivors now, and I will grant you quick deaths. Refuse, and I will make your suffering legendary. The main coalition fleet was still engaged with enemy forces in the distance. They were too far away to help. The training squadrons were alone against a warship that could destroy them all in minutes. Ketzeron stared at the command ship on the view screen. His hands trembled. For all his talk of courage, he had never faced anything like this. None of them had. The bridge was frozen in terror. Then Kefsorin did something unexpected. He turned to Alara, and his voice was quiet, almost humble. Human, you saw the trap when I did not. You knew the enemy when I was blind. I have mocked you. I have dismissed you. But now I ask you truly. Took a breath. What would you do? Every eye on the bridge turned to the 19-year-old human girl. The weight of 400 lives pressed down on her shoulders. The face of Warlord Draxus waited on the screen. Ilara looked at the command ship. She thought about the children in those escape pods. She thought about the child she had been, alone and afraid in the dark. Then she smiled. I have an idea, she said, but you are going to think I am completely insane. They underestimated the child warrior until the enemy bowed to their commander. Part 3. Alara stood before her squadron and explained her plan. When she finished, the bridge was completely silent. Kethsorin stared at her like she had grown a second head. Vela's silver face showed pure disbelief. Even Mordon 7, who rarely showed emotion, seemed confused. Do you want to challenge Warlord Draxus to a duel? Kethsorin said slowly. A ritual duel from ancient Zorvathi tradition. A tradition that most Zorvathi do not even remember. The Kethmer Alara confirmed. A one-on-one battle between commanders. The winner decides the fate of the conflict. It is written in their oldest laws. How do you even know about this? Vela demanded. I studied them, Alara said simply. After Harken 4, I spent years learning everything I could about the Zorvathi. Their history, their culture, their language, their traditions. I needed to understand the species that destroyed my family. The Kethmer is ancient, yes. Most Zorvathia have forgotten it. But the old warriors still remember. And Draxus is old. Radon 7 ran calculations. Probability that Draxus accepts the challenge, 14%. Zorvathi do not typically honor outsiders with traditional rights. They will accept, Alara said with certainty, because the Zorvathi value one thing above all else: reputation. Draxus has spent 200 years building his legend. If a young human challenges him to Kethmer and he refuses, he looks like a coward. His own officers would lose respect for him. He cannot afford that. Soren shook his head. And if he accepts, the Kethmer is not physical combat. It is a strategic duel. A war game between minds. Draxus has conquered dozens of worlds. He has crushed enemies for centuries. How can you possibly defeat him? Ilara met his eyes. I have something he does not. What? I have nothing to lose. I have already survived the worst thing imaginable. I have no pride to protect, no reputation to maintain. I am free to fight in ways he cannot predict. That is how humans have always survived. We adapt, we improvise. We break the rules. Vela stepped forward. Why would you risk this? If you lose the Kethmar, Draxus wins by law. We must surrender the survivors. Ilara looked out the viewport at the distant escape pods, small lights flickering in the darkness. Those pods are full of children, she said quietly. Children who are scared and alone, wondering if anyone is coming to save them. I know how that feels. I lived that nightmare for 3 weeks on Harkin 4. Every night I wondered if I would die. Every morning I wondered why I should keep going. She turned back to her squadron. I will not let those children feel forgotten. I will not let them believe that no one cares, even if it costs me everything. The bridge was silent. Then Catsorin did something no one expected. He placed his fist over his heart in the Crethany gesture of respect. I have been wrong about you, human, he said. Do what you must. I will follow your lead. Alara nodded. Then she opened a transmission channel to the Zorvathi command ship. Warlord Draxus, she announced, her voice calm and clear. I am Commander Alara Vance of the Galactic Coalition. I invoke the ancient right of Kethmer. I challenge you to single combat, commander against commander. The winner takes all. The loser withdraws. Do you accept, or does the great warlord fear a human child? The response came after a long pause. When Draxus spoke, his voice was filled with cold amusement. A human nose of Kethmer. Interesting. Very well, little creature. I accept your challenge. Not because I must, because destroying you and our sacred tradition will make your defeat even more humiliating for your species. Prepare yourself. The duel began. Holographic projectors activated between the two ships, creating a shared virtual battlefield that both commanders could see and manipulate. Each side controlled an identical fleet of virtual warships. The goal was simple: destroy the enemy's forces completely. The last commander with ships remaining would win. Draxus moved first. His strategy was aggressive and overwhelming, sending waves of ships forward in classic Zorvathi formation. He had used these tactics for centuries. They had never failed. Alara did not respond with conventional defense. Instead, she retreated, pulling her ships back in ways that seemed random and chaotic. Draxus laughed. You run like prey, he mocked. Is this human strategy? To flee until you can flee no more? Alara said nothing. She watched and waited. Draxus pressed his advantage, pushing deeper into the virtual battlefield. His confidence grew with every move. The human was clearly outmatched. This would be a quick victory. Then Alara struck. Her retreating ships had not been running randomly. They had been leading Draxus into a position she had designed move by move. Suddenly, her scattered forces converged from multiple angles, catching his fleet in a devastating crossfire. Ships he thought were retreating turned out to be flanking. Positions he thought were weak turned out to be traps. Draxus lost a third of his fleet in seconds. For the first time, the amusement left his voice. Clever, but one trick will not save you, he adapted, becoming more cautious. But Alara adapted faster. She used tactics no Zorvathi had ever seen. She sacrificed ships in ways that seemed foolish, giving up valuable pieces for no apparent reason. Then, moves later, those sacrifices would reveal their purpose, creating openings that devastated Draxus's formations. Mordan 7 watched the duel with increasing fascination. His processors analyzed every move. She is not using any known doctrine, he reported. Her patterns match nothing in my database. She is creating entirely new strategies in real time. Bela understood. She is not fighting like a commander. She is fighting like a survivor. She is fighting like someone who learned warfare not from books, but from staying alive when everything wanted her dead. The duel continued for over an hour. Both commanders lost ships. Both made brilliant moves, but slowly, impossibly, Alara gained the advantage. Draxus became desperate. He threw everything he had at her remaining forces, trying to overwhelm her through sheer aggression. But Alara had anticipated this too. She had been waiting for him to lose patience. Her final trap closed. Draxus stared at the holographic battlefield. His remaining ships were surrounded. His flagship was exposed. He had only one winning move left, a desperate attack that would break Alara's formation and turn the battle, but that move required sacrificing his own flagship. His virtual self would die with the ship. For a Zorvathi, this was unthinkable. A commander never sacrificed themselves. A warlord never accepted personal defeat. It violated everything they believed about honor and strength. Alara had not beaten him with superior firepower. She had beaten him with understanding. She knew Zorvathi's psychology better than he knew himself. She had maneuvered him into a position where victory required him to become something he could never be. The virtual battlefield hung frozen between them. Draxus stared at the young human across the holographic display. She was so small, so young, so fragile by Zorvathi's standards, and yet she had done what no enemy had ever accomplished in his 2 centuries of conquest. She had made him face himself. "You planned this from the beginning," Draxus said slowly. "Every retreat, every sacrifice. You were leading me here, to this exact moment?" "Yes," Ilara replied simply. "You knew I could not sacrifice my flagship. You knew my pride would not allow it. I knew that strength can become weakness when it blinds you. I knew that 200 years of victory would make you believe you could never lose. That belief was your true enemy, Warlord. I just helped you see it." Draxus was silent for a long moment. The whole galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly, Warlord Draxus reached out and deactivated his fleet. The duel was over. The human had won. They underestimated the child warrior until the enemy bowed to their commander. Part 4. The silence that followed the duel was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced. On the Coalition ships, officers stared at their screens in disbelief. On the Zoravathi command ship, warriors who had never seen their warlord lose stood frozen in shock. Across the void of space, two civilizations held their breath. Warlord Draxus had conceded. A 19-year-old human had defeated a legend. The ancient rules of Kethmer were clear. The victor's terms must be honored. Ilara had won, which meant the survivors went free. The Zorvathi could not touch them. Draxus issued the order to his ships. They pulled back from the debris field, allowing Coalition shuttles to collect the remaining escape pods. Medical teams worked quickly, bringing survivors aboard. Children who had been hiding in the darkness, terrified and alone, finally saw friendly faces. They were safe. But before the Zoravathi fleet withdrew completely, Draxus made an unusual request. He asked for a private communication channel with Ilara, just the two of them. Ilara's squadron advised against it. Kethsorin warned that it could be a trick. Vela worried about what the warlord might say. But Ilara accepted the transmission. Draxus appeared on her personal screen. Up close, she could see how old he truly was. His scales were faded, marked with countless battle scars. His eyes were deep and tired, holding memories of 2 centuries of war. "I have conquered 17 worlds," Draxus began. "I have destroyed fleets that outnumbered me 10 to 1. I have faced the greatest warriors of a dozen species. Never once have I yielded in Kethmer. Do you understand what you have done?" "I understand that 400 people are going home to their families tonight," Lyra replied. Draxus made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Humans, you truly are strange creatures. You do not gloat. You do not demand tribute. You speak of families as if they matter more than glory." "They do," Ilara said simply. The warlord studied her through the screen. "Tell me, Commander, how old are you?" "In your species measurements, 19 years." Draxus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost sad. 19 years. I have weapons older than you. I have scars older than your entire civilization's time among the stars. And yet you defeated me." He leaned closer to the screen. "I looked at your strategy during our duel. It was unlike anything I have encountered. Your tactics did not seek to win. They sought to protect. Every move you made was designed to minimize loss, to preserve what mattered. You fight not for conquest, but for something else." "I fight so that children do not have to grow up alone," Ilara said. "I fight so that no one has to feel helpless while the people they love die around them." "You have experienced this," Draxus said. It was not a question. "Zorvathi attacked my colony when I was 7. Your people killed everyone I loved. I survived alone in the wilderness for 3 weeks." Ilara's voice did not waver. "I could have grown up hating your entire species. Instead, I chose to understand you. I studied your history, your culture, your beliefs, because hatred is easy. Understanding is hard, and understanding is what wins. Draxus leaned back. Something changed in his ancient eyes, something that looked almost like respect. My people have forgotten much, he said quietly. We remember how to fight, but we have forgotten what we once fought for. We speak of honor, but we have forgotten what honor truly means. I've spent 200 years destroying, conquering, proving my strength. I look at you, a child, by any measure, and I see something I lost long ago. What is that? Purpose. Draxus rose from his seat. Your species will either save this galaxy or humble us all, Commander Vance. Perhaps both. I do not know if we will meet again. But I will remember this day. I will remember the human child who taught an old warrior what he had forgotten. The transmission ended. The Zorvathi fleet jumped to hyperspace and disappeared. The crisis was over. When Alara returned to the bridge, her squadron was waiting. Ketzoran stood at attention, which surprised her. He was Crethany royalty. He did not stand at attention for anyone except the highest leaders of his people. At Commander Vance, he said formally. Then he did something that shocked everyone watching. He bowed. It was not a small gesture. It was the Crethany gesture of acknowledged worth. A deep bow reserved only for those who had proven themselves in battle beyond any doubt. Warriors earned this recognition after decades of service. Some never received it at all. I mocked you as a hatchling, Kasoran said. I dismissed you as weak and worthless. I was blind. I was the child, playing at war while you understood its true meaning. You have my blade, Commander. Whenever you need it, wherever you need it, I will be there. He straightened. Behind him, Vela stepped forward. I have studied tactics for over a century, the Vethari said. I thought I understood strategy better than anyone. But you showed me that true strategy is not about moving pieces on a board. It is about understanding hearts and minds. You understood Draxus better than he understood himself. That is a gift I will spend years trying to learn. Mordon 7 spoke last. His mechanical voice was as flat as always, but his words were not. I calculated a 12% probability of useful contribution from you. My calculations were incorrect. I am updating my assessment of human capabilities. Previous data was insufficient. Humans are not weak. They are unpredictable. Unpredictability is strength. Lara looked at her squadron. These aliens who had dismissed her, laughed at her, ignored her. Now they stood before her with respect in their eyes. Thank you, she said quietly. But I did not do this for recognition. I did it for the children in those pods. Later, when the rescue ships had docked and the survivors were being treated, a message came for Alara. One of the medical officers handed her a personal communication device. This was sent from one of the escape pods, the officer said. A survivor asked us to deliver it. Lara played the message. A young face appeared on the screen. A Vethari child, no more than 8 years old, with wide silver eyes and a trembling voice. Hello, my name is Tali. I was on the medical station when the bad ships came. I was so scared. I thought no one would save us. But then a voice came on the radio, a human voice. She told us where to go. She told us we would be okay. The child sniffled. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for not letting us be alone. Okay? The message ended. Alara watched it 3 more times. Each time, tears rolled down her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. That night, she stood alone in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. She thought about the little girl she had been, hiding in the forests of Harkenfor, wondering if anyone was coming. No one had spoken to her through the radio. No one had told her it would be okay, but someone had come eventually, and she had survived. Now she would make sure others survived too. The next morning, priority transmission arrived from Coalition High Command. Commander Alara Vance was ordered to report to Station Meridian immediately. She expected disciplinary action for breaking formation during the battle. She had violated direct orders, after all. But when she arrived at the command center and the doors opened, she found something else entirely. The room was filled with admirals from all 12 Coalition species. They sat in a semicircle, watching her enter. And standing among them was High War Master Kethvorin, the same Chthoni who had mocked her at the opening ceremony. His expression was unreadable. The Supreme. Admiral rose from her seat. "Commander Vance," she said, "please come forward. We have much to discuss about your future." They underestimated the child warrior until the enemy bowed to their commander. Part 5. Alara stood before the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy. 12 species, 12 admirals, countless centuries of combined experience. They all watched the young human who had done the impossible. The Supreme Admiral spoke first. "Commander Vance, your actions during the rescue operation were extraordinary. You broke formation against direct orders. You challenged an enemy warlord to single combat using a ritual no outsider has ever invoked. You won." Alara braced herself for punishment, but the Supreme Admiral smiled. "The Coalition does not punish brilliance," she continued. "We reward it. Your victory over Warlord Draxus has changed everything. Our intelligence networks have detected significant movement within the Zorvathi Dominion. It seems your duel created ripples that are still spreading. A holographic display activated, showing reports from across the border zone. The Dominion is fracturing," explained the Admiral. "Hardliners want war, as always. But a growing faction, led by senior warriors who remember the old traditions, respects what you did. They are speaking of change, of reconsidering their path, and leading this faction is none other than Warlord Draxus himself." Alara could not hide her surprise. "Draxus. He has sent a formal communication to Coalition leadership. He wishes to discuss alternatives to continued conflict. But he has made one thing very clear." The Admiral paused. "He will only negotiate with you." The weight of those words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Alara, a 19-year-old human, had been requested by name to represent the Coalition in negotiations that could decide the fate of billions. "We are offering you a mission," the Admiral said. "Travel to neutral space. Meet with Draxus and the moderate Zorvathi leaders. The goal is not military. It is diplomatic. A chance to prevent a war that would kill countless innocents." Lara felt the eyes of every admiral on her. "You want me to negotiate peace? We want you to finish what you started. You showed Draxus that strength can take many forms. Now show his entire faction. Show them that humans are not weak because we choose compassion over conquest." Before Alara could respond, movement drew her attention. High War Master Kethvorin stepped forward, the massive Chthoni warrior who had laughed at her during the opening ceremony now stood directly before her. The room went silent. Kethvorin looked down at the small human. His yellow eyes held no mockery, no contempt, only something that looked like wonder. "Among my people," he said slowly, "we do not kneel easily. To kneel is to acknowledge someone as greater than yourself. I have knelt only once in my life before my own commander when I was young and foolish. He taught me what strength truly meant." The War Master lowered himself to one knee. His massive form bowed before the teenage human girl. Gasps echoed through the chamber. "You have taught me what strength can become," Kethvorin continued. "Not the strength that destroys, but the strength that protects. Not the strength that conquers, but the strength that understands. I would be honored to serve under you, Commander Vance, now and always." One by one, the other admirals rose from their seats. They did not kneel, but they bowed their heads in respect. Even Morden Seven's superior, a fully mechanical Morden admiral, stated for the record that probability of successful negotiation increased by 340% with Vance's lead. The Supreme Admiral spoke the final words. "Commander Vance, the Coalition offers you a field commission. You will not go to these negotiations as a trainee. You will go as a fleet commander. Do you accept?" Alara looked around the room. She thought about the frightened child she had been, hiding in the dark. She thought about all the children still out there, scared and alone, waiting for someone to save them. "I accept," she said. Before departing for the negotiations, Alara made one final journey. She returned to Earth, to the memorial for Harkenfor. It was a quiet place, a wall of stone carved with 12,000 names. Among them were her parents. She placed her hand on the cold surface, feeling the grooves of the letters that spelled out her mother's name, her father's name. I could not save you, she whispered. I was too small, too young, too helpless. I have carried that weight every day since. But I understand now. You did not need me to save you. You needed me to survive, to grow, to become someone who could save others. Tears fell, but she did not look away. I am going to meet the people who destroyed our home. Not with weapons, with words. With understanding, I am going to try to build peace so that no other child has to lose what I lost. She pressed her forehead against the stone. I love you. I will never stop loving you. And I will never stop fighting for a galaxy where love matters more than power. The negotiations took place on a neutral station at the edge of known space. When Alara arrived, the Zorvathi delegation was already waiting. Warriors in dark armor stood at attention, their faces unreadable. And at their center stood Warlord Draxus. He looked different than before. Older, somehow. More tired. But when he saw Alara, something shifted in his ancient eyes. Commander Vance, he said. Fleet Commander now, I am told. You rise quickly for one so young. I had good teachers, Alara replied, including you. The negotiations were difficult. The moderate Zorvathi faction wanted change, but centuries of tradition could not be erased in a single meeting. There were arguments, disagreements, moments when it seemed like everything would fall apart. But Alara did not fight with threats or ultimatums. She fought with truth. She spoke of the children she had seen on Zorvathi ships during her studies. Young warriors with hollow eyes, trained from birth for nothing but war. She spoke of the emptiness she recognized in them, the same emptiness she had felt after Harkin 4. Your war is not making your children strong, she told the Zorvathi leaders. It is making them hollow. I know, because I was hollow once. I learned that true strength is not about destroying your enemies. It is about building something worth protecting. Let me show you there is another way. Draxus listened. The other Zorvathi listened. And slowly, impossibly, they began to believe. On the final day of negotiations, Draxus stood before the assembled delegates from both civilizations. He looked at Alara, and then he did something that sent shockwaves across the galaxy. He performed the Zorvathi ultimate acknowledgement. A full bow, body bent nearly to the ground, arms spread wide. It was a gesture reserved only for those considered worthy of ruling. Only for those who had earned absolute respect. His officers followed. One by one, the Zorvathi warriors bowed to the young human commander. The broadcast of that moment was seen across both civilizations. It was shown on news channels, discussed in council halls, watched by billions. The image of enemy warriors bowing to a teenage human girl became a symbol of something new, something that had never existed before. Hope. A formal ceasefire was established. The first step toward lasting peace. Alara returned home to celebrations and honors, but she deflected every praise. When reporters asked what she wanted to do next, she smiled. There are still children out there who feel alone, she said. Children who think they are too weak, too small, too young to matter. I want to find them. I want to show them that being young is not weakness. It is where strength begins. Years passed. The ceasefire held and slowly transformed into true peace. Trade routes opened between former enemies. Cultural exchanges began. Children who had been raised to hate learned instead to understand. And Commander Alara Vance became Fleet Admiral Alara Vance, the youngest admiral in galactic history, on a bright morning at the Coalition Naval Academy. A new class of cadets arrived for training. Among them was a young Zorvathi, the first of their kind to train alongside former enemies. The young warrior was nervous, unsure. Surrounded by species who had once been targets, the instructor gathered the class together. Cadets, we have a special guest today. Please welcome Fleet Admiral Alara Vance, who will address you before training begins. Alara walked into the room. She was older now, but still young by galactic standards. Her uniform bore the marks of countless achievements. But her eyes were the same as they had always been, kind, understanding, strong. The Zorvathi cadets stared in wonder. They had heard stories of this human, the commander who had defeated warlord Draxus, the diplomat who had built peace, the legend who had started as a child that everyone underestimated. Alara looked across the young faces before her. She smiled. "I know what many of you are thinking," she said. "Too young. Too small. Too different. How can I possibly succeed when everyone expects me to fail?" She paused. "Good. Let that doubt fuel you. Let their underestimation be your greatest weapon. Because the galaxy does not change through power alone. It changes through courage, through compassion, through the willingness to stand up when everyone else sits down." She walked among the cadets, her voice warm but certain. "Some of you will face enemies who seem invincible. Some of you will face prejudice from those who should be allies. Some of you will doubt yourselves more than anyone else ever could. When those moments come, remember this. Every hero started as someone ordinary. Every legend began as a nobody. Every commander was once a child who had to prove themselves." She stopped in front of the young Zorvathi cadet. The warrior straightened nervously. "What is your name?" Alara asked. "Vorith, Admiral Vorith." Alara smiled. "You are the first Zorvathi to train here. That must be frightening, yes, Admiral? Good. Fear means you understand how important this is. Now prove that you belong here. Prove that your people and mine can build something better together. That is your mission, cadet. Not to be the best warrior, to be the bridge. Can you do that?" Vorith stood taller. "I will try, Admiral. That is all any of us can do." Alara addressed the entire class once more. "Go forward. Be brave. Be kind. And never forget that the galaxy is full of people who will tell you what you cannot do. Your job is to prove them wrong." She turned and walked toward the door. But before she left, she paused and looked back at the young cadets one final time. "They will underestimate you, Fleet Admiral," Alara Vance said. "Let them. And then show them what humanity really means." The doors closed behind her. The cadets looked at each other. Zorvathian Crethany, Vethari, and human, Morden, and a dozen other species. Different histories. Different fears. Different hopes, but in that moment, they shared something they believed, and that belief would change the galaxy.